Hello everyone and welcome to Components, Component Design, Component Decomposition. I've seen a lot of people starting to get the hang of Angular syntax, which is awesome. That's like one of the biggest struggles on this. So the next thing that I want to start poking at is this idea of component design. And this applies to every component framework. So if you end up working with React or Vue or something down the road, the stuff works exactly the same with that. So the idea of componentizing an interface is that we break it down into smaller pieces. So let's take a look at what that might look like. I'm going to pull up the Google search results exercise. All right, so this is effectively the same assignment as Wineflix. It's just way longer. So I made Wineflix to have a shorter version of this, but otherwise works the same way. You get some working HTML and CSS, and yes, I did that. I ripped off the Google homepage, but then you figure out how you break this into components. So let me walk through how I would approach something like this interface and componentizing it, and we can talk about it a bit. So when I'm figuring out where the components are in an interface, the first thing I do is start drawing some boxes. Hey, that sounds kind of familiar. So like, first thing I might do is figure out where are the big boxes. So the biggest boxes I see on here are like this header area. And then this like kind of body area. And then the next like major thing that I see is probably that sidebar.
So you're making a wireframe.
I'm making a wireframe, just backwards. I already have the thing and I'm trying to wireframe it. But yeah, it's the exact same process. Okay, so that's kind of like the macro layout. And hey, if we think of that as problem decomposition, like each of those is effectively like a little standalone thing, right? So, and then we just got to make them arranged like this. So we could do that with grid, flex, whatever. So, but anyway, we go, okay, what else do I have that's like some kind of standalone piece? And so I might think this little box right here, that's probably a component. Or this like Twitter widget. Because like this link and this link, those have some things in common. Those are probably like the same thing. This Twitter thing and these little like preview things, those kind of look like they're different. Those are probably components. Definitely this one. That's the most component-y component I've ever seen. As well as this one here. That little thing right there is probably a component. Okay, so that's breaking down that one. If you look at this one, the logo is almost definitely a component. That search box is almost definitely a component. anytime you have like a list like this, especially like where one's active, the whole thing is probably a component, and potentially all the little things inside of it also. This thing here, where you have like one lead image and then some like supporting ones, the whole thing is a component, and each of those is probably a component too. This little header, I would probably call that a component. All these details, I'd probably call that one. Anytime you have a list like this, the whole thing is a component, and then each of the items is usually a component. These are probably the same component. I could probably get talked into a couple other ones, but otherwise, that's a pretty respectable place to start on that. So we're going to talk a lot more about it, but questions so far?
I have a question. Just because of where I'm at on my tour of heroes. You said that on the nav bar that all of them are different components, but they're all on one component page. Okay.
It's okay. Components can have components, can have components, can have components. It's
Okay.
it's just like a DOM tree. I mean, it's literally a DOM tree, where each of those things is works the exact same way as the DOM.
All right, because I have my navigation on one component, so I just wanted to know.
Yeah, and like this is more art than science. So we could do that whole like navigation as just one component. We could do it as one container component that has like 7 child components in it. Like a case could be made for either one. Other questions so far?
Not a question, but there are a lot more components than I thought there would be when I originally read the concept of them.
Yep. They're little. Remember, HTML elements. That's our metaphor for components. Just a custom HTML element. Well, HTML elements are little. It's like paragraphs and stuff. Components can be bigger than that, but they can also be that small. Oh, missed one. Definitely each of these tweets. So this box here is like the little collection of tweets. Each one of those cards is absolutely a component.
We should not have a hard time finding 10 components on that page. I
No,
think
you
that's
should not.
what? Yeah. Cool.
Like I think when I did my first solution to WineFlix, here, let's take a look. See, original WineFlix was view. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. The other ones? Yeah, so there's 13 in mine.
Is there a point at which we should consider this is too small to be a component by itself?
Yes. So like the boundary for that is different for everyone. I tend to like them smaller than most people, but at some point, all of the extra like indirection from like having components that render elements, at some point you're just recreating the elements, and you're not adding any more clarity or reusability. And like, I don't think a component has to be reusable. For example, this top bar here, that's not reusable. The body of this is not reusable. Like, you'd only have one of them. And it'll really only be configured one way. So like, but I think that's still perfectly acceptable to put in a component because it helps you keep a bunch of related stuff together. And then we have things like these search results where those are totally reusable, or these little icons with like links and labels. That's like classic component stuff. Now where it starts getting to be maybe too much is this little heading here. I would probably make that a component. A lot of other devs maybe wouldn't. What I probably would bristle against is making this and this two different components, where you have like a heading component and a subheading, or like a like heading description or something like that. Like, and even still, there's an argument to be made for that, because like, it's not just the functionality and stuff, it's also these styles and keeping those styles kind of like encapsulated together with it. And so there's a concept called design systems, where instead of working off of a mock-up like this or a wireframe, you build all of these little reusable design pieces that are effectively just widgets that you can assemble any interface into. And so, this is a design system. Maybe we have a secondary heading component and a tertiary heading component. And so that gets split into two. But I would probably break it down about this little. Same thing with this. You could say that like this list is one component and then each line of it is maybe a component. That feels a little too small to me, but I don't know. It probably doesn't feel too small to someone.
So there's like the risk of making it look like the bootstrap divs and divs and divs and divs if you go too far.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's just not like telling you anything about the structure of the app anymore. Okay, so once you've figured out where you like your boxes, the next step is to figure out which of these are reusable. Which of these are effectively the same thing, they just have some different parts. So, for example, each of these tweets, oh baby, is that like almost for sure a reusable component. So then you figure out which things are fixed on that and which things are variable. So it's a card that looks like this, and it's got some content there, and then it has something there, and then something there, and a little dot, and then more content. So, okay, if that's the like sort of shape of the component, I figure out, all right, what are these? And so that's like the, we could call that maybe the content. We could maybe call this the source, and maybe call that the time. All right, so this is a component with 3 props. If I give it content, a source, and time, it can generate these things. And so that might be like tweet card and its source is the string Twitter, and its time is 8 hours ago. And like, I could also say, no, I'm going to give it like an actual like date object and let the card figure out whether or not it should say 8 hours ago or today or just display the date or whatever. So you could also figure out whether or not you want to format that and give it to it that way or make the component calculate it itself. Both pretty reasonable ways to approach it. This has content, which is go ahead, step our whatever. And that's the tweet card. Most of component design is figuring out, wait for it, the inputs and the outputs of the component. All we're doing in this first part is inputs. The components also output things. We'll hold off on that for just a sec. But this idea that they take these inputs and then do something with them, apply them to a template. So we call the component with that, and then those end up getting slotted into that template and then end up looking like that. Same thing with these little buddies over here. They take in an icon URL and a link label and then a link URL that you're supposed to go to when you click on that. There's a little template for that. You plug in the variables. One component gets used 7 different times. You have things that don't need to take any inputs, like this logo. Fuck it. Just have a logo component that just has this this image URL in it already. That's fine too. But when you're looking at these reusable things, you figure out, all right, what can I make variable in this? And those end up being your props. Ask me some questions.
For the date pipe in Angular, is it just for current date, or could you set it for like 8 hours ago?
So the pipes are formatting whatever data that you give it. So it's not giving you a date. You are going to say, like, if we were going to do this, it might be time is set to the current date property of the class. And then I'm going to pipe that into the date formatter. And so then my component is going to get a formatted date. And I did that formatting on the template by running it through that pipe. But the formatter, that's a pure function. That just takes in whatever this value is and does whatever I want to do with it.
Okay.
More questions about finding the variable parts of components. IMO, the hardest component on this page is this one right here. How do you break that up? Every company is going to have like totally different like little factoids and stuff like this. So what I recommend is that, all right, if that's the thing, we've got this one content area right here that all of them would have. So that's going to be like description. And then this stuff is all going to be one container. But it's going to iterate through like an array of like key facts or something. And each key fact is going to have a label and then an array of key fact details or something. So that'll be the key fact details. Or maybe I'll call this key fact heading. So it's got a key fact heading and it's got key fact details, which are an array of labels and an optional URL. So if I make this a component and I pass in a description and an array of key facts, it could make this. By iterating through key facts, each one of which has a heading and an array of details, which optionally have a link. In fact, I'm relatively sure that's how I did it. Let's take a look. This would have been, oh, this is Wineflex. Google. Yeah, check out how many components I did on this. It's a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Yep, looks about right. Okay, so this thing over here, I probably called that founder detail? Oh, I did like a special one just for the founders. Yeah, here we go. Oh, so this one I did them all separate and then made these like detail components for each one. See, I had a heading and a thing called a slot, which is like a little placeholder for another component, like that. Oh, one thing that every one of you is going to screw up sooner or later. When you do these things, even though they're like in a list like this, don't make the list item part of the component. You'll thank me later. Because sometimes you do something like that in a list, and sometimes you don't. Leave the list item out. Keep that wherever the actual list is. The UL and the LI should be in the same place. Also, check it out. This is Vue, completely different front end framework, but I mean, is it? all that syntax should still look relatively familiar. It's not like they capitalize their component names instead of kebab casing them. It's still double mustaches to put something in there. They put a colon in front of a one-way bound property instead of doing it that way, which is how Angular does it. Not really that important a difference. They keep their templates in the same file as their classes. I don't know. Is that much of a difference? Probably not. Keep the styles in the same file too. Stuff's all the same. More questions about trying to make a component variable.
If it isn't too much trouble, could we see you break down another one of these components like you did with this key fact details? Just as an example.
I'm going to do you one better than that. I'm going to have you do one, and then we'll compare notes.
Pass.
All right, let's do... All right. All right, I'm putting this in Discord. And yeah, Chris, that is absolutely what it is. It always has been components, man. All right, let's take 5 minutes. I don't care if like you draw on a screen. You're not gonna submit it. Do it on a notepad, something. See like what components you can identify on this. Go. Another 30 seconds. All right. Let's take a peek at it. All right, so following the process, my macro big piece components, that header, probably this whole, come on, man. Probably this whole thing here. Those are probably my biggest level components. I could also be talked into ending that component there and then considering this kind of a different thing. In the header, that's probably a component. This whole thing is a component, and arguably maybe the little ones too. I probably wouldn't, but I don't know. I could get talked into that. Definitely that. Especially since this turns into a search field when you click it. That's a pretty good giveaway that that's a component. Something that has behavior like that. Some other low-hanging fruit. That's probably a component. Each of these buttons is not only a component, but might be the same component. Definitely these 3 dots. And you can see that one actually gets reused a bunch of places. That's probably a component. That definitely is. This little new badge. I can't tell if these network things are part of the actual image. If they're not, I guess those would be components too. Oh, hey, that new thing gets reused up here also. This whole thing is probably a component. I would guess maybe that. See how that truncates there? I'll bet the component handles that. Like you pass in the entire string into this component, and then the component figures out. It knows how big it is, so it figures out where it needs to truncate it. See, each of these is the most component-y component that ever componented. These are like the kinds of things that people think about when they think about components. So yeah, I'd probably break it down like that.
Is TV for you considered a component?
Oh, no, but this entire row is.
Ah, cool.
So that's probably just an element inside of this bigger component. And like the giveaway on that is, go back to the actual page, that there's a bunch of them. Like, that's a component that has these 5 cards on it. This is the exact same component with those 5 cards. Here's this component with these 6 or whatever. But that's probably how I'd break it down. Ask me some questions about it.
It becomes much easier when you look at it like a web page. Like it's like scaffolding a web page. Like our HTML doc, I meant.
Yes. And so right now we're doing it backwards. We have the finished product and we're trying to reverse engineer what the structure of it is. But if you were doing this the other way, it's that wireframe process. And your boxes in the wireframe, spoiler alert, those are probably your components.
So the description for a show, you said, is its own component. The string season 1, episode 1. It wouldn't be a part of the bigger box that has Candy, the title, in it.
I'd say probably not, because if you're on a Candy page and I want to see season 2,
Episode
that's
2,
probably
it's
that
going to be
Candy
different.
isn't going to change.
I see. Okay.
Can we see you build one in Angular?
What was that?
Can you just take one of them?
Yeah, totally.
And
absolutely. So actually, before I do that, other questions about this breakdown? Cool. So let's say I want to build one of these things. These little TV show cards. So I'm going to go over here and do npx Angular CLI new, and this will be Hulu component demo. No, and I'm going to use SAS. So the way that I'm going to approach this to componentize it is the same as I was teaching you guys about building web apps to begin with. Start by hard coding it. Don't worry about exactly what the breakdown is. Figure out what is this HTML and CS, like that's the target, right? We want to start with the end in mind. It's one of our habits of excellence. So one of the ways we can do that is by writing the finished HTML first, and then figure out what kind of tricks can we do to generate that HTML and remove some of the redundancy. Way easier to do that all first. Okay. Over in Hulu component demo, I'm going to make a new ng start. Oh, no, it's just npm start, right? Yeah. Come on. npm.
Man, foreign computers are going to explode.
Yeah, man.
It's going to be so bad.
Angular's pretty heavy too. Not all the other one. I think Angular's probably the heaviest one this size of Ember. The more opinionated something is, the bulkier it tends to be, just as a rule.
It was like 20 to 30 minutes to get the Tour of Heroes going.
Good God.
Were you using the sandbox or did you?
I put it in VS Code.
Oh, their sandbox is great though.
Yeah, feel free to use the sandbox for that stuff. Probably a better.
Yeah, I didn't like that. It hung up and would not move.
Oh no.
I don't know what happened to it, so I put it in VS Code.
All right, so get rid of all that. And then let's just make some broad scaffolding around all this. Home, TV, movies, news, my stuff.
Kyle, while you're making that,
Yeah.
I noticed that in these HTML files, we don't have to do the HTML5, the big doc header. Why is that?
Who can answer that question?
It's because you already have one. It's outside of your source file. It's an index HTML that already exists that you can go and change, and then this app.component feeds into that index HTML.
Bingo.
So you see the app root down there is inside the body.
You got it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
This is the single page in the single page app. All right, so I've got that and something like that. And in this main area, we've got candy, and then this TV for you. This will be called show selector, and it's gonna have a TV for you, and then it's otherwise an unordered list of these shows. Each one of which has an image that's like the background. So we'll call that candy, and let's see if we can grab an image for that. That somebody else is kind enough to host. I'll do this. And it also has that little new badge. And also see a like vertical ellipse, and okay, while we're at it, let's do the the Hulu little network thing too. All right, cool. And then like, just imagine that we had a bunch of those. All right, so something I want to call your attention to. Notice how getting that stuff structured, I didn't really worry too much about how it looked. That's a good pattern. Figure out what the structure of this should be before you start getting too hung up on what the appearance of it is. Because remember, the HTML is supposed to represent the structure of it, not the appearance. So those two things should be able to be handled independently. In reality, yeah, there's a little bit of crossover. I think of it more as a conversation, but it's way too easy to structure your HTML to kind of only work in one visual layout, which I would not recommend. Okay, so let's see where we're at. All right, very nice. So if I head over to the CSS for this, I'm going to say, we'll call these shows. I'm going to say shows is here. I'm going to constrain the images. All right. The shows probably should be flexed. And should probably be flex flow row wrap. Well, I feel like that didn't take. No, it got it. Sun, how come you don't flex them? Oh, it's because they're all, I'll bet there's one of those I didn't close. Oh yeah, so they're all just in one thing. That'll do it. All right, now we go. Hey, there we go. And let's prevent the wrapping. Yeah, okay. And we'll do overflow on the x-axis should cause a scroll. All right, it's none yet, but I'll bet if I add another one, I can make it scroll. Yeah, there we go. Hey, just like them. So then within one of these shows, this is tricky. So what it looks like it does on theirs is, it's probably a background image, honestly. But everything else looks like it's absolutely positioned in this container. So I wonder, can I do display relative on the show and then set images for the shows to be, oops, not display, come on, position relative, and this position absolute, and then try to stretch it so that it's like top 0, right, left, bottom. Okay, cool. That kind of worked. Now it doesn't take up any space, so that's why it did that. So then I also need to like set the width manually. Oh, but I'm doing that there. Ugh. Maybe like that. Oh, it's because of I need to do that with the show. There we go. Okay. And then then I also want to absolutely position like that new badge. I'm going to give that a more descriptive class. So the new badge needs to be position absolute. And also should be top and left. And I think the reason I'm not seeing it right now is it's hidden behind that picture. So I also need to bring the Z index up a little bit. Yep, there it is. And while I'm at it, let's see, it kind of looks like a button almost. It's got a tiny bit of padding around it. It's got a that looks like maybe just a tiny hint of blue in the black. So RGB 240, super desaturated, and then probably a little bit darker. And then the background color is just more like a generic gray. So 240. So lighter on the background, a little darker on the text, and a little bit more font size 12, and maybe a little bit more padding. Nope, a little less padding. All right, Goldilocks. Also, it looked like it was all uppercase. Yeah, so let's do a text transform uppercase. Cool. And was it bold too? Yeah, it's pretty bold. Font weight 700. Cool, I'll take it. And it wasn't actually pinned in the corner. It's like just a little bit off. Oh, and it's got a little drop shadow to it too. So we can say it's like box shadow. And we can use that same blue. Just make it kind of dark. And then the other thing that it's doing, it looks like it goes all the way around actually. So it's 0, 0. The other thing that we can do is sort of pull it out of the corner a little bit. So instead of pinning these here, kind of like that. All right. And I think it's a little smaller all around.
You, I was gonna say, did you want to put the border radius on it before you shrink it down?
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah, it's got a tiny bit of radius. I'll take that. Border radius, probably 4 pixels. Too much. And then yeah, close enough. I haven't done any of the typography or anything, so that's in the ballpark. And then the this ellipse. Trying to think of how to do this. So that's something you'd get from an icon library. Fuck it. Like I'll show you how to do it because it's actually already in your WineFlix because that has some icon stuff too. So if I take a look at how I did it on WineFlix, that was so first take a look at what I installed. And it's these 3. Ford Awesome, Ford Awesome SVG Core, Ford Awesome Free Solid SVG icons. So I want to npm install at Ford Awesome SVG Core at Ford Awesome Angular Font Awesome. And Ford Awesome free-solid-svg-icons. Free solid SVG icons. So all of those are part of an icon font. That's how you get social media icons and like all that sort of stuff. The big list of what the things are is over under icons, and the one we're looking for is like ellipse. Here we go. Ellipsis vertical. Cool. And then there's a couple places to check for. By the way, this is like what I actually do when I'm using Font Awesome. I look at some other project where I used it and then reverse engineer it from there because I still have not memorized it. Was there anything there? No, no. All these are fine. So is it part of the module? Yeah, there we go. So I need to go over to my app and pull up the app module. And I want to make sure that I have this Font Awesome module in there. And it looks like I put it in the imports. And all right, those look the same. And then to use it, there we go. It says FA icon, and then you bind the icon to like whatever the thing you want is. So in mine, that'll be that. Class is options, and the icon is FA solid. Or no, I bet I did have to bind that. Yeah. One more place to check. So if I look at that, yeah, okay, so I have to actually import the icons from whatever, and then make them available on the component. That happens a lot, by the way, when you like import something from a library, and then you end up using it. By saying, like, so I want FA ellipsis vertical. So to use that in the template, it just needs to be a property of the this class somewhere. So I can say FA ellipsis vertical is FA ellipsis vertical. And now I've made this thing that I imported a public property on the component. And so then I can do things like bind it. Where is it? Here. So that's going to be FA ellipsis vertical. Cool. And then that replaces this. And if I played my cards right, I should have one hiding behind that image now. Clean up a little bit. Add component HTML. Cool. Add component SCSS. That was options. I guess those are technically in here. So I need to move the z-index up. And I need to make the color probably the same as that background color here. And then let's make sure that it's actually in there somewhere. Why didn't it get it? So it's not picking up any of these styles. Need to be out here. Let's see if I... Oh no, it got that. Ah, it's because it's not positioned. That would make sense. Position absolute. There we go. I see them now. And these go on the left side, kind of down from the top a bit. So that's going to be right is 6 pixels, top is 12 pixels. All right, and I think it needs to pop a little more. Maybe a little bigger. I feel like that didn't do anything. There we go. So how big is theirs? That. Yeah, let's make it like 20. Cool. And then, yeah, it's in the ballpark. I'm noticing that the entire thing is curved a little bit. Let me put this back up here. So we can say that this is border radius as well. Maybe a little more aggressively. Yeah, definitely more aggressively. So let's seize it on there. Why is it not radius in that border? Oh, it probably needs to be the image. Because otherwise, like, the image is out of the document flow, so it's not really constrained by the outer thing. Yeah. Cool. All right.
What was the radius when you were doing that radius? When you weren't doing it on the image, what was it doing it to? Was it doing it to the container?
It was doing it to the container, but since the image isn't part of the document flow, it's not contained by the container.
Okay.
So there is a way around that. I could have clipped the border, and that might actually be a smarter way to do this, but that's what's happening there. And then I'm going to get rid of those bullets because I don't like them. List style none. Much better. And then I think there's one last piece to this component. That's
Space between the images?
we also, yeah, we also probably should do that. So we could say, like, any show that follows a show has a margin left of 16 pixels. Or but I don't have a show that follows a show because they're wrapped up in these LI tags. So
Did you just do li plus li?
I could do shows li that. That'll probably work. Hey, beautiful. And then otherwise, these don't have any padding. Cool. All right, almost there. So the last piece of this, I think, is the network body. Yeah. So the little network symbol, that's class network. Also probably needs to be absolutely positioned and have its z-index out in a color set. So that's going to be right 6 pixels, bottom 12 pixels. Ooh, interesting. It went off the thing. Why did it do that? Oh, because that's the whole... Oh, I see. The actual container is quite a bit bigger than that image. So the whole show container is that, even though the image... And so it's not going to, like, stretch out the image to cover that. But that's also making it so that you can't see that thing. Whatever. So if I make that 22... Getting closer. 42. I'm just going to call it around 50. Okay, and that one is, I think, also bold. Cool.
Now, since you brought up that the network image could have been in bed, and that one certainly has one, could you just move the dots down?
Sure.
I'm just wondering if that would be, I mean...
I could also like use the correct image. It's like, I just try to demonstrate the process of this.
Oh yeah, you're blowing my mind. This is crazy.
It's like I think it is a component because we also have it on the hero image where we have that same network. If we look back to our wireframe where we said, hey, that in the corner is probably.
Oh yeah, it's got this one. That could. Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
And if you look at Futurama, doesn't have one.
Sure.
You have Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which just got, they bought that and changed from CBS and went to NBC. So it's probably easier just to have the icon and place it. So I think it is a component, but.
Well, let's take a look. If we check inside here, hey, that looks an awful lot like it's thumbnail brand. Yep, they do it as a component.
And because we also see with it squished down like that, we see that it's changed its position inside the box as well.
Beautiful. Good reasoning, by the way. And then let's get, I'm already tired of the typography on this. Sorry to be precious, but it offends mine sensibilities.
While we're over here, is there a reason you're using, Fort Awesome rather than Google Fonts icon library?
Google Fonts has an icon library?
Yeah, if you
news to me.
If you close your sidebar there, you should be able to now. Maybe the drop down. If you could Google it, Google Font material icons, and you can see all of their beautiful.
Oh wow.
Yep, there it is.
Oh nice, and these are way better than the Font Awesome ones.
And you can change their weight, their fill.
Oh man, and that's like exactly the shit that they won't let you do for free on Font Awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I've never noticed that either.
Oh man, I'm way into that. Good looking out.
That I think got released like a month ago. Those material icons, and I meant to send something to say, I think you'd think this is cool because I know you're into typography.
Yeah, man. Oh, these are so much fucking better.
And you don't have to download anything.
Well, I mean, it works basically like the same way, I assume. But like, yeah, this is. Oh god, the lines on those are so much better than the fucking gross Font Awesome ones that are just like, I don't know. All the Font Awesome stuff is so chubby, and like they make really good ones, but you have to pay for like for the decent ones. Do they have brand icons too?
I didn't see brand icons on there.
That's the other thing that you often have to pay Font Awesome for, but like that Hulu logo, like, is there a Hulu? No. But there is one for Font Awesome. Nope. Should have been. Google. There you go. It's got some brands. Well, do they have their own brand? Nope. Bummer.
What about under category? See at the top it says category? Yeah, right there.
Brand. Oh, it's got Fi. It's got some stuff.
The Google services. You can also go from material symbols up there to material icon. I don't know if that'll help at all.
All right, I'm very happy about this. I'm gonna go poke around that sooner or later. All right, in the meantime, let's Let's get a good sans serif going. Something a little bit curvy. Poppins looks mighty fine to me. So I will take a regular of that. I'll have a medium and then supersize my fries. Does feel that way sometimes. All right, so grab these. Import it up top. Actually, so I'm doing all this in this component file right now. That doesn't like bleed out to other stuff, and I want it to. So this should really go in the styles SCSS file. And then I can just set the default typeface to font family Poppins. They fall back to sans serif. All right, back in business. All right, much better. So, all right, that's kind of like looking component-y at this point. So at this point, now what I want to do is throw all of this into its own component. So I can do npx ng generate component show. I'm going to call it show listing. Oops. All right, so it made that stuff for me. If I look up show listing HTML, copy and paste one of these in there, and then take that SCSS that I did for this. I'm going to change the class to show listing also. Yank all of this out. I want to grab that too. All right, so now that's all that's left there. I need to move my FA ellipsis vertical into the show listing class. So app component, nope, app component PS. Grab that and that, take them out. Show listing T, nope, come on, man. Show listing TS. Seen a bunch of people doing this. They give you this boilerplate for the lifecycle hook as just like a demo of how you would import something else and like put it on like if you're not using it, just get rid of it. We also don't need the constructor, don't need this interface. Don't need that. All right. So this does not exist on app component. So now it's mad that I'm using it even though I took it out over here. Except I can app show listing and delete all these. Cool, and if I did it right, I should see the same thing. Almost. Some of my styles broke, but all the stuff's back. Let's see what's going on with these. Oh, I didn't change the class name. That's why. All right, cool. All those things are back now. So, so we've taken a hard-coded thing, we've turned it into a component. It's still fixed. So we need to figure out which parts of this are variable. And so one is not the new badge, it's whether or not it has the new badge. So that is like a piece of state that would be in this show listing component. So if I go to the to this file for this thing, I would want some kind of input for is new, and I'm going to default that to false. And so I need to, nope, not like that. I need to add the import for that. And so that's what it defaults to. And I'm going to say that that's optional also. All right, and then in the show listing HTML, now I can only show this if it is in fact new. So that's going to be ng if is new. Cool. So now none of them have it. And if I go back to the template where I was doing these things, I could say, oh, well, that first one is new equals true. And now that one has it. These ones don't. Starting to make this a little bit configurable. So then I could also say, all right, well, this network, this is variable. So I could say I want that to be whatever the network is. And then I can say that the network will be given to us. That one, it's, oh no, so some of them didn't have the network either. So we'll say that that one is optional, but it's a string. And then over here, we can also like ng if this. So we can say like ng if there's a network given, render this element and show the network in there. So that would be something like network is Hulu. Oops, is the string Hulu. Cool. Now that one has Hulu. None of the other ones do. Configurable. And then this background image. That's kind of like the last thing on here. So we could say that the show listing component will get an image URL. It has to have that or it's not valid. So like Futurama didn't have a network. If they don't have an image, like that should throw an error. It should always have an image. So we put an exclamation point on that one. And then we say, I'm just going to put this over here for right now, that this is the image URL. Oh, and also for the alt text, it needs the show name, show title. Oh, we can just say title. So an image URL and a title. It also needs to have a title. And then over here, Oh boy, this is starting to get kind of long. The correct way to do this is to break these all up onto new lines, like this. Just like we did with HTML, remember? Image URL. Okay, so I got one there. If I make some copies of this, I wonder if I can do some different stuff. So maybe this one is not new. So since the default's to that, I can just leave it off. This one's on NBC. It's called 30 Rock. And if I grab an image for that, now it's configurable. Booyah achieved!
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily have to iterate over, create your list through iteration, I should say.
Sure. So actually, that's probably the last thing I should do. So, I just passed strings and like booleans and stuff directly into this. That's probably not the best way to do it. So, let's do that with iteration instead. So this app component HTML, if I go to app component TS, what I really want to do is move all this data into data rather than the template. So I can say that the shows are an array of objects that have like an is new and a network and a title and an image URL. Like so. This one is not new. This one's NBC. This one's 30 Rock. Like so. All right, so now I have all this data in an array of objects. That's better. Now I can do something like iterate over this. What do we call them? Shows. Let show of shows. And then this becomes show.isNew or show.network or show.title or show.image URL. And if I get rid of that, do it all work? There they are. And so now it's really flexible. So if I do something like just add another object to this, I should get another show. Or if, I don't know, for example, this array, these objects and this array and stuff are coming from an API, why, at that point, we'd have a web app. That's componentization.
There's a lot of navigating between different files.
Yes, there are. And so some people hate that so much that they did things like made it so that the template and the class and the styles were all in one file. So they didn't have to jump around quite so much. That's the view style. But it's like one of the first things that people notice when they switch over to view from anything else, is that it has more of that stuff, well, all that stuff in one place. React kind of splits the difference. So React keeps the logic and the template in one place, but it keeps the styles separate. And if I show you how I'm doing that on the LMS, like sometimes it's fine. So this is some part of the LMS. The problem is that, oh, this one doesn't even have a template. Hang on. Another one. Okay, here's a more simple example. So we've got the template there. We've got any kind of logic and stuff that we need here. The problem is like that stuff spirals out of control so fast. And like, oh, cool, it's all in one place and it's all right on fucking top of each other. So like this is the thing that renders Markdown in the LMS. It's very complicated. It's like one of the most complicated parts of the LMS. But like it's got all those imports and it's got all this config stuff, except it also has like a lot of the HTML parts of it, and they're all sort of mixed in together. Like part of the React style is that you kind of commingle your JavaScript and your HTML stuff pretty freely. And so it's so hard to find where the HTML parts are versus the more like JavaScript parts. So like, yeah, that's JavaScript. That's HTML though. It's extremely irritating. And anytime like I like leave the asylum for a little bit and do something in any other SPA, I'm reminded of how excruciating it is to work when all these things are on top of each other.
So is Angular winning you over a little bit or no?
A little bit. Like I had pretty low expectations coming into it, but it's fucking delightful. It's like it's really nice. I still think I probably like Vue better. Because like Angular is restrictive in some unpleasant ways, like with more advanced stuff. Everything we're doing now, I think, is really well designed. But there are a couple things that I was looking at in their advanced guides that are like, I don't know. You might have made some things easier, and then you made the hard things way harder, which I don't know. Trade-offs. It's all trade-offs. But yeah, so far I've actually been really impressed with Angular. It's pretty nice to work with. Also,
navigating is why I wanted this class, but this is crazy cool. And usually I think you make it look way easier, and you did, but I know that it was way harder. Like from my perspective, usually it's like, I can go do that. And now I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry. Can you explain the input output one more time?
Yes, absolutely. So, this app component is, you can think of that as like the outermost component. And then it is rendering app show listing. inside of it a couple times. Hey, just like DOM elements, remember? Elements inside of elements. The problem is that all of the data for what these show listings need, that's out here. So what we do to get the data into those is pass that show data into each one. That's the input part. And so the way that we indicate that a component should be getting something from somewhere else is we use the input decorator to say, oh, by the way, be on the lookout for somebody trying to give me this data. And then that's how you give the component the data.
So like that's how the individual cards become reusable as
Yes.
opposed to passing it into the like a card component.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, these are all the variable parts of the component, and we've bound them. On the child component side, we do that by annotating them. And then on the parent component side, we do that by binding them here. And then these just look up. These are technically any JavaScript expression. That's why I could, for the network, go like to hard code it to NBC, because that's just a string. So you can do that. You can also do, like for this one, that's an expression, right? Because expression values are expressions. We spent like a month talking about that. So we can do that kind of thing. And this could also be, you know, whatever. And if you just put this stuff on here, these are public properties of this app component class. And like, you can do expressions with those too. And so then the other side of this, which we'll talk about another day, is the output. Since these are fake elements, well, elements have events, right? We can make these things emit events, and then we can listen for those events, and just like we do with the DOM, call methods when the event fires.
Thank you.
Other questions about component design?
Just a real quick basic one. What was that npx CLI command you used to get the show component folder set up?
So the whole thing, I don't have Angular CLI globally installed. I think they probably said on the site do something like npm install -g at angular/CLI. That works. The whole JavaScript world is kind of moving away from global installs. So instead of doing that, you can do npx at Angular CLI, and that's exactly like you globally installed it and you're running the commands and stuff. And so doing npx at Angular CLI new is the exact same thing as doing ng new if you globally installed the library. But that makes it so that it's the exact same command whether or not I already have it installed. That's a very much nicer experience. Once you're actually in the, like something you've already made though, it's installed that for you. So if I do npx ng generate, that's just like doing ng generate, but it's going to use whichever version of Angular CLI is in my dependencies. So it reads it out of there once the actual app is built out. Slightly more predictable because it'll use the libraries version of it. If you have a newer or an older version globally installed, like that's the problem with global installs. They don't always stay up to date with whatever project you're currently working on. That's why I like this strategy. Otro preguntas?
No, but once you upload this video, I'm probably just gonna run it again and mirror the whole thing just to get this in my hands.
All right. So remember the process. Figure out the macro layout. Figure out what the so this is our like problem breakdown kind of stuff. Macro layout. Figure out what the smaller pieces are. Figure out what the reusable pieces of those are. If you're doing it yourself, hard code it. If it's already hard coded, figure out which parts of it change. And then you're solving this little teeny problem right here. How do I get 3 things into this component? How do I conditionally render them? How do I iterate through something? Where does this data come from? Can I start by hard coding it in the template? Can I take that thing I hard coded in the template and move it out to the class? Can I take the thing from the class and move it out to a parent component? Can I take the thing from a parent component and move it up to an API? And that's it. You're probably more likely to go too big on components than too small. So you can technically go too small, but that's probably not your problem. You're probably making them too big.
Breaking it down into small steps.
See, Tiffany gets it. This is what I like so much about this class. Cool. That was a lot. I'll let you know when we're going to do that OO review session. I'll try to get this video uploaded like now, but elsewise, go to lunch.